Okay, so now we're going to look at our one-tailed single sample t statistic. And the changes from two-tailed to one-tailed are the same changes in the last chapter. So it changes some steps and won't change others. Of course, one of the big ones that changes is we're changing our hypotheses. We're now predicting something a little bit different. So again, same problem, problem 12, but now this would be 12b. Part B has the one-tailed. B says, is the estimate from the participants significantly higher than the actual number of 3.1? Use a one-tailed test with an alpha level 0.05. So the alternate hypothesis is the treated population mean will be higher, it says, greater than our 3.1. And so the null hypothesis, as always, is the opposite. The treated population mean will be less than or equal to 3.10. So again, we have to go, when it says one-tailed, we've got to look at the story problem. In this case, it was very clear, predicted that the estimates would be higher. So again, that's why we're on the right-hand side there. So those are our hypotheses. And just like I said before, even with one-tailed, you can write it in English if we're doing this online, or you can write it in the symbols, whatever works for you. If it's efficient for you, it's good for me. Step 2 is going to, of course, change. Because now we're putting all that 5% on one side of the curve instead of breaking it up. So now it's a one-tailed test. Our alpha level is still 0.05. And our degrees of freedom is unchanged. There's still 9 participants. So we still have 9 minus 1 equals 8 degrees of freedom. So now we've got to go back into our unit normal table. We have to look it up every problem. So we're going to go down to degrees of freedom of 8 like before, but make sure, be careful, use the top header. The top header for one-tailed test, not the second one for two-tailed. So go to the top one for one tail, slide over to 0.05, and then go down to 8 degrees of freedom. Now, our critical T is only going to be positive now because we're only looking on the right side. If we were looking for scores to go down, as usual, this would only be negative, but right now, it's only positive. And the number you should find in the table is 1.860. So that's our new critical region. Those are our new targets. That's where our T statistic needs to land. So then step 3. Just like in the last chapter, for step 3, nothing changes. We didn't change the data at all. We didn't change our measurements. We didn't change our sample sizes. All we changed was our prediction about that data. So the calculation values are all the same. Our sample variance remains 20.25. Our estimated standard error remains 1.5. And our T statistic remains 2.20. So now where do we land? Now we are in the shaded area. So again, notice that we're going to end up rejecting here. We'll write that down for step 4 in a second, but why is that? Two-tailed, we only had 2.5% shaded on the right and 2.5 on the bottom for 5%. Now all 5% is on the right. We've made the target bigger. So we missed it the first time, but now that we've made the target larger, we only had to get basically 1.86 standard deviations above the mean. It's an easier target to hit. So in this case, we're going to end up for step 4 rejecting that null hypothesis. In our APA format, it's going to look mostly the same. We still have a T of 8. Our statistic value is still 2.20, but now we're going to flip this sign around to less than. We rejected, so it's less than 0.05. So mostly the same changes we would expect to see when we switch from two-tailed to one-tailed. And that'll continue to be true, again, all semester long at this point. So that is the end of our one-tail single sample t-statistic example out of the book. So for the next section that we'll go to in the next video, we'll talk about some other factors. We'll talk about some of our statistical assumptions and those things relative to these. Okay, see you in that video.